Oh dearie me, what culture, what do we have here? 5 reasons why The Rock versus Roman Reigns is a horrible, I repeat, horrible WWE WrestleMania 37 idea. Now, this article was sent to me by about 5 people saying, please react to this is terrible, please give your opinion, we want to see you rant on this. So I'm pulling through for the people, and this is an article which I've skimmed through myself, just skimmed it, and some of the points WhatCulture make are absolutely nauseatingly horrendous. Now, if you're a fan of WhatCulture and you're watching this video, you don't really watch my content, for one, hi, hit subscribe, hit like, all that kind of good stuff. But anyway, if you're a fan of them, cool, I don't really care. But if you're defending this take, like the way they are, oh my god. So without much further ado, I'm just gonna get into this. So 5 reasons why The Rock versus Roman Reigns is a horrible idea. The big dog versus the great one should not happen at the showcase of the Immortals. Okay? Good, big, hot take. Can they justify this? Can they give any legitimate, good reasons as to why the big dog versus the great one should not happen at the showcase of the Immortals? Let's read this. So, will The Rock take on Roman Reigns at the showcase of the Immortals? Not long after Roman Reigns returned, rumors have swirled that the big dog could go one-on-one with the great one at WrestleMania 37. Though WrestleMania is nearly half a year away, it seems that the wheels are already in motion to bring the two face-to-face this spring. That's not a horrible idea at first glance. Who wouldn't want to see The Rock back in the ring for a real match, not a 5-second squash after a few quips on the mic? Granted, he may be limited in how physical he can get due to his filming schedule. He'd likely only be featured a handful of times on SmackDown too, which would leave much more to be desired. Still, Roman would no doubt be give everything he's got to make the bout unforgettable, and WWE would go all in as well to deliver something special. But upon closer look, this might not be the greatest idea for WrestleMania. In fact, this may be a horrible plan for a WrestleMania that may once again suffer from crowd and performer issues. Okay, so you see what they do here? They say, yeah, it could be good, Reigns and The Rock segments could be captivating, Reigns and The Rock. Oh, but upon closer look, it might not be the greatest idea for WrestleMania. It might be horrible. So let's see why they say this would be a horrible plan for WrestleMania. Let's take a look into what WhatCulture have to say as far as why it'd be horrible, okay? 5. We already know how it ends. Okay, this is something which in pro wrestling, by and large, we always know. We pretty much always know how matches end. Did anyone think Hulk Hogan would beat The Rock at WrestleMania 18? Did anyone think that? And I look at, there's so many examples of this. Most WrestleMania main events and most matches, by and large, are predictable. But that doesn't mean they can't be great. And later in this article, I'm going to really expose this point. This point, at face value, may seem, oh yeah, it's fairly understandable, but when you see what they're going to say later, it comes off just as absolutely horrendous. So they give some examples here. Roman and The Rock, as far as what Reigns and The Rock could do, that Reigns and The Rock get 1, maybe 2 rematches at back-to-back pay-per-views, or they have to team up to beat down some heels. And then they say, listen to this, just remember this, keep this in mind for later. There's no way that The Rock can beat Roman and walk away without a rematch, just as there's no way WWE will shell out a load of money to have The Rock put Roman Reigns over in a quick match with no rematch or future build. So they say that, implying that Reigns versus The Rock is redundant because we already know how it will end, we already know all that kind of stuff. So keep that in mind as we go on with the list. That's just a point which, just keep that in mind. So, reason 4, it sets another bad example. Now, the whole point with this one that they're trying to argue is that there's no arguing that bringing back marquee names from yesterday is a proven way to boost ratings, generate buzz, and secure an easy cash grab. Where it may be good on paper, however, it's not always good in practice, especially when these part-timers or one-offs damage the morale, momentum, and monetary incentive of full-time performers. Bringing Goldberg back to squash the Fiend's title run only for the Reigns handoff to not take place is a huge waste. It unnecessarily steamrolled the Fiend's momentum and knocked him back into the pecking order. This point is absolutely just brain dead. This point makes no sense. Comparing Goldberg and the Fiend to Roman Reigns versus The Rock potentially happening is absolutely ludicrous. The Fiend was in the middle of like a 5-month-long title reign, and then they, for no reason, had Goldberg face him. That was a match that no one was asking for. No one was going, oh, we need to have The Fiend versus Goldberg. For one, as I said back many months ago when it was happening, the two styles made no sense. Both guys Goldberg wrestles 3-minute matches, The Fiend squashes all of his opponents. So it was a lose-lose, and the fact that no one was asking for it. That match wasn't called for in storyline. Like, it just wasn't. And then you're comparing that to Roman Reigns versus The Rock. Reigns versus The Rock. I don't know if you've been watching SmackDown, but for the past 2.5 months, Roman Reigns has been in a Samoan bloodline, dynasty-based feud and storyline with Jey Uso. And it's been the most captivating television in pro wrestling basically all year. So they're completely different. Goldberg, The Fiend, no one asked for it. Reigns versus The Rock makes complete sense per storyline. So this point, reason 4 is just brain dead. And then there's this point. I'll read it. There are better matchups for Reigns at this WrestleMania. Are there now? News to me, because as far as I'm concerned, Reigns vs. The Rock is the most logical, mainstream, just rational matchup you can do. So there are better matchups for Reigns at this WrestleMania. Okay, and also for one, great spelling you got there. So let's read through this. Reigns as a top guy has been a hard pill for some to swallow in the past. Still, these fans have to admit that when he's paired with the right partner, a Roman Reigns match can be one of the best on the card. Yes, The Rock versus Reigns would be a great match that even the most cynical of fans would still cheer for, but so would placing Roman with The Fiend, with AJ Styles, or with any number of others. Now, this point, okay, what they're trying to say here, as I'll continue reading on, is that Roman Reigns versus The Rock wouldn't be the greatest in-ring match, and having Reigns versus someone like, as they say here, Dolph Ziggler, Kevin Owens, and Seth Rollins, even King Corbin. WhatCulture think King Corbin versus Roman Reigns in the main event of WrestleMania is better than Roman Reigns versus The Rock. Why? Because The Rock's conditioning isn't up to par, because The Rock's cardio and his work rate is not up to the level of Daniel Bryan, that you need to see Reigns versus someone else. Like, this is the same company who in point 5 said that it was too predictable, the outcome is just too straightforward, but this is the same company who want to see Reigns versus Dolph Ziggler, Reigns versus King Corbin, Reigns versus Kevin Owens, or even as they go on in another point, they even say in the next point, Reigns versus Ali or Buddy Murphy. But Reigns versus The Rock is too predictable. What? Huh? How does that make any sense? Like, this is just the illogic of these people. Okay, you want to see a great match to the point where you defy all logic, you destroy the purpose of storytelling, ignoring the fact that Reigns versus Jey Uso, someone who is, as a match and as an opponent, it just doesn't make much sense, but because of the storyline and everything they've done, it turned out to be some of the most captivating pro wrestling of 2020. You take that and all the storyline wrapped up in it, and instead of ignoring the storyline, you want to see Reigns versus Ziggler, Reigns versus Baron Corbin, like Reigns versus Seth Rollins. Okay, cool, do that at the Royal Rumble, but don't do that at WrestleMania. There's no need, especially when you can do Reigns versus The Rock. So that's that point. Essentially, the fact that Reigns versus King Corbin's a better option, and then here's basically a follow-up to that point. Other superstars deserve the spotlight. Okay, let's read more. Reigns is a hard worker, but for as long as he's in Vince's good graces, he will always get the spotlight. To this point, I say rightfully so, but we'll go on. So, will The Rock, whenever he wants it, and most other part-timers for that matter, but there are others who deserve it right now. Now, this one is a bit of a contentious point. Deserve it, okay. If you work hard and you compete hard, do you deserve stuff? Sure. But does working hard just necessarily make you deserve the WrestleMania main event? No. Do you deserve a spot at WrestleMania for working hard year in, year out? Yes. But do you deserve to be main eventing versus Roman Reigns when the match that makes complete sense is Reigns versus The Rock? Do you deserve that? No, you don't. So here we say Drew McIntyre deserves his WrestleMania moment with fans in attendance. Okay, who says there's going to be fans in attendance? Alright, it's like Drew McIntyre should be facing Roman Reigns at Survivor Series. That's the match they should be doing. They're not doing it. Instead, McIntyre is now number 1 contender, whatnot, okay? McIntyre does deserve a moment, but not this year. This Reigns versus The Rock is what should be happening at WrestleMania 37. Big E deserves a strong singles push. 100% he does. But is it too early to have Reigns versus Big E at WrestleMania 37? Would that not make more sense at maybe SummerSlam? Having Big E beat Reigns at SummerSlam? Like, would that not make more sense? And then they say that Daniel Bryan deserves one last hurrah if he is indeed ending his full-time in-ring work soon. Okay, Daniel Bryan can face Roman Reigns at TLC. They're clearly building to that somehow because Jey Uso destroyed Daniel Bryan on SmackDown, so clearly Bryan's in the plans. But do you want to have Daniel Bryan versus Roman Reigns instead of Reigns versus The Rock? In a mainstream sense, who the hell's Daniel Bryan compared to The Rock? Okay, Bryan has somewhat of a name because of what happened 6 years ago, but comparing that to Dwayne The Rock Johnson? Nuh-uh. So then they say, this gets worse. Otis won the Money in the Bank contract, then lost it, even with fans behind his push. Though The Miz doesn't need a title run to stay relevant, his hard work over the last 5 years has earned him another strong run with a title that isn't the Intercontinental Championship. Okay, sure, once again, great, but is that hard work worthy of him or them facing Roman Reigns in the main event of WrestleMania? No. The hard work makes them warrant a WrestleMania card spot? Sure. But should they be facing Roman Reigns in the main event of WrestleMania? No. And this gets even worse. They couldn't help themselves. Cesaro deserves to be in the main event spotlight. I'm sorry, what would he say in those promo segments? Cesaro one-on-one on the mic with Roman Reigns. What could Cesaro possibly offer? Would that be a compelling matchup because, Cesaro is a deserving talent? Okay, have Roman Reigns beat Cesaro on a random SmackDown. That's not WrestleMania main event level, especially when Cesaro hasn't been built up as a singles guy for like 5 years. So that's that one. And then Murphy and Ali would greatly benefit from main event bouts. Oh, but Reigns versus The Rock is too predictable. Do Reigns versus Ali because that's so much less predictable. No one would be able to predict that match. Reigns versus The Rock is too predictable. Oh, do Reigns versus Ali, because that's much better. You see the hypocrisy here? You see this hypocrisy of forget what draws money, forget what makes the most sense in storyline, forget what WWE is seemingly building towards most, and seemingly putting all their eggs into the basket of with Reigns and The Rock. Forget that. Instead, throw logic and storytelling and continuity out the window. Let's make a deserving guy like Ali into the WrestleMania main event guy to face Roman Reigns. You see why pro wrestling's fallen, folks? Because this is the mentality that's led to the surge in NXT, the surge in great matches for the sake of great matches without storytelling or reason to care. This right here is what's wrong with pro wrestling in 2020. The fact that Reigns vs. The Rock, a true legitimate dream match, is being cast away by these people because they want to see Reigns versus Ali. Just why? They'd rather see Reigns versus Otis, some comedy goofball jobber, as opposed to Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Just giving that slot to The Rock wastes a load of opportunity. You can give Murphy and Ali matches versus Roman Reigns on SmackDown, but there's a thing called the WrestleMania main event. Not everyone deserves to be in the WrestleMania main event. I'm sorry to burst your little bubble, but it's just the fact of the matter. So that's reason 2, probably the worst one on the list. And then, well, never mind, this one's the worst one. 1, Roman Reigns needs to distance himself from The Rock. I'm sorry, what? Have you been watching SmackDown in the past 2.5 months? Reigns needs to distance himself from The Rock. Are we going to ignore the fact that the whole storyline that's been carrying WWE for the last 2.5 months has been based on Reigns and the Samoan bloodline and Paul Heyman and Jey Uso and Jimmy Uso and WhatCulture, man, WhatCulture. So they have to say, the program between Reigns and Uso was a fantastic idea, and the fallout is proving to be just as interesting. Roman may go up against Jimmy, and an appearance from Rikishi as an enhancement on an active competitor would make the storyline more intriguing, especially if creative really is setting up for Reigns versus The Rock in a showdown. But ultimately, adding The Rock to any part of Roman's current run will only dilute his legacy, not improve it. Just... they've got to be trolling at this point. They have got to be trolling. Adding Roman Reigns and The Rock would not benefit Reigns' legacy. It would only dilute it. Okay. This is the same article that's saying that Roman Reigns versus Ali or Roman Reigns versus Murphy at WrestleMania is the match to go with, and that would be better than Reigns versus The Rock. What would Roman Reigns versus Otis? What would Roman Reigns versus King Corbin at WrestleMania in the main event? What would that possibly do for Reigns' legacy? What would that possibly do? Reigns versus The Rock, for about the 7th time this video, is one of the last true dream matches in pro wrestling. And you're just not going to do that because, why? Roman Reigns versus Ali would be a better in-ring match. That would get more stars in the Dave Meltzer star rating system. That is some of the most ludicrous lunacy logic I have ever heard. That is ridiculous. That is horrific. Having Reigns versus The Rock and saying that that would dilute Reigns' legacy. And they go on here. Even if Roman completely squashes The Rock, the spotlight will be on the Great One. No. The spotlight will be on the storyline itself. The spotlight won't just be on The Rock. Have you seen how Reigns has been performing on SmackDown? So, this list, I swear. Reigns deserves to have a strong run with the fans behind him that lets him build new legendary rivals. Oh, for crying out loud. Oh my god. Okay. If you want to have Roman Reigns versus Murphy in the main event of WrestleMania just to try and quote-unquote build new rivals when that would lead to nothing, if you want to do that, sure. In your fantasy universe, do that. But the fact of the matter is, this is WWE. Roman Reigns and The Rock are two of the biggest stars that the company have made in the past 25 years. And the fact that you think Reigns versus Murphy and Reigns versus Ali at a WrestleMania, and Reigns versus Otis, and Reigns versus even Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania is better than Reigns versus The Rock, it goes to show you just how far this company's fallen. I mean, WhatCulture's fallen. They say 10 years from now, whether The Rock or Roman Reigns is still active in WWE, or if he's cut down on his in-ring time, what will his legacy look like? A WrestleMania or 2 matches against The Rock would be a novel memory, not a legendary rivalry. Reigns could go down as one of the greats, but to do that, he needs great organic rivalries to build up his legacy. Okay, in this same vein, how was The Rock versus Hulk Hogan a new, fresh rivalry? This is the same logic. This is like saying having The Rock versus Hurricane Helms at WrestleMania is a better idea than having Reigns versus Hulk Hogan. Or sorry, The Rock versus Hulk Hogan. These people would rather see The Rock versus Hurricane at WrestleMania because Hurricane's a new opponent than having The Rock versus Hulk Hogan because it's a guy from the past. You see what the problem is here? Well, this is like saying having The Undertaker fight Vladimir Kozlov at WrestleMania 25 would be better than having Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels because The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels have been around for forever and Vladimir Kozlov is a new talent. You see how little this makes sense? Hopefully this video has done a good job at exposing this list because this list, quite frankly, 5 reasons why The Rock vs. Roman Reigns is a horrible idea. One of the worst lists I've ever seen. And I get, if you think Reigns vs. Big E is the match to go with, awesome. I can completely see why. If you think Reigns vs. The Rock isn't the thing they should go with, totally cool. But to say it's a horrible idea and give these 5 reasons that they have, simply reprehensible. So yeah, that's been the video. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you have, be sure to like, comment, sub, is on a drill. WhatCulture's just... they fell off a cliff when Blompier left them. Oh well, like, comment, sub, is on a drill.